Welcome to Columbus Metropolitan Club. My name is Josh Harrison, a member of the Board of Trustees here at CMC and president at Improving, who also happens to be our sponsor for today's luncheon. Well, here we are in the midst of the holiday season. If you're like me, you haven't even started shopping and will wait until it's way too late. Shopping opportunities abound, and you want to be a cool parent or grandparent or partner, and tech always offers the latest and greatest dongle or gadget to make an impression. So what do? We thought it would be both fun and informative to ask some of our smartest and techiest Metro Club connections this question and see what they have to say. Without further ado, please welcome our speakers. First up, we have the Chief Operating Officer from Rev1 Ventures, Kristy Campbell. The Chief Technology Officer at Lower, Burrus. Owner and founder of Game Arena, Kogge. And our host, founder and chief mischief maker of the Idea Foundry, Bandar. Alex, the floor is yours.
As soon as my name tag comes off, there we go. Always glad to be at the Columbus Metropolitan Club. This is my favorite conversation meetup in Columbus, and I'm glad that all four of us can now add smartest and techiest to our business cards too. So, and really excited to learn more about Justin and Kristy and Will. So, Justin Kogge, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your exciting venture.
Yeah. So my name is Justin Kogge. I'm the owner of Game Arena. It's a facility out in Hilliard, Ohio. We have about 70 high-end PCs. We hold about 300 esports tournaments a year. And I also recently launched Vanguard. We are a pro Fortnite team. Our players have won a little over 200,000 in the last 6 months. And we are actually opening up a new location for Game Arena on OSU campus here in the next Q1 of next year.
Hi, I'm Kristy Campbell. I head up operations for Rev1 Ventures. So during the day, I get to spend time with hundreds of entrepreneurs who are building really cool tech-based companies here in Columbus, Ohio. Been working at Rev1 for about 5 years, and that's really allowed me to see everything from life-saving gene therapies to really cool artificial intelligence software applications. Prior to Rev1, I've spent most of my career working for tech-based, mostly venture-backed companies. So excited to be a part of this conversation and hear what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Will Burrus. I'm on the techier side rather than the smarter side. I've been equal parts executive and entrepreneur for the last 20 years. On the entrepreneurial side of the fence, I have a company called Modern Technologies, used to be called Immersive Is. We've been exploring the cognitive side of virtual reality. And then I just recently took a role with Lower.com to help use artificial intelligence, machine learning to simplify homeownership. So I am a nerd.
and in good company.
Absolutely.
My name is Alex. I'm trained as an engineer, but my sister Layla is an artist and a sculptor. And when she proved to be a much better welder and machinist and blacksmith and maker than I was a little bit embarrassed and very envious. So I started a community workshop called the Idea Foundry, where we can come and learn how to do woodworking or welding or 3D printing or virtual reality. It's a community-based gym for nerds and people who make stuff. Have about 800 folks who come and use the space regularly. I strongly feel that if tech sounds a little intimidating. We don't always understand what's working underneath it, so it's a little bit scary. I think if tech isn't accessible and fun, then it's kind of failing us. So my favorite definition for the purpose of technology is to make our lives easier and more fun, from healthcare to virtual reality. So hopefully today we'll talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff, and maybe Kristy can keep us grounded about how it's also valuable and helpful, not just to folks in Columbus, but around the world. I know that Andy wanted to seed a few of these ideas about what folks might want to buy for those people who have everything this December, and expand some of the things that we might live in the world of, but show you a bit more. And to make this a little bit personal too. So Andy, if you want to go to the first slide. We put together a few categories of where this kind of tech might go. I think personal data is something that a lot of people can improve their lives with if they track it a bit better, if they understand where they're spending their money, where they're spending their time, how to improve their health. We'll talk a little bit about some gadgets, specifically about some tech, and then we will talk a little bit about toys, and I'm glad that a few folks had a chance to play with some of the virtual reality and other things in the back before we started. And then talk a little bit about some easy-to-install home tech. So if you want to make your home a little brighter, a little more musical, a little more interesting and interactive, these are some very accessible and easy-to-use devices. So the next slide, please, Andy. I'll seed this conversation about how some of this tech has improved my life, and then we'll toss it to the rest of the panel and ask how this kind of fun might improve everyone's lives. This is a Bluetooth scale. So this is a regular scale that'll measure your weight. It will also measure your body fat with electric impulses that go through your body. Harmless, but helpful. And it'll send that data directly to your phone or to your email address. So if you really want to make sure that you're getting the Thanksgiving pounds off, this is a good way to make tracking easier. And if we go to the next slide, please. Here, to make this a little bit personal, this is my weight over the last year, from November 2018 to November 2019. And what I learned is that weight can really vary. You know, if I have a big meal, if I have Thanksgiving, that'll vary. The next slide, please, will show body fat. This is something that I never really knew that you could measure so easily. And here, it's a much tighter number. And we can see that something happened in the middle of that graph. I didn't move next to Jenny's. It wasn't winter time, so I didn't stop running. If we go to the next slide, we'll see what really happened. You might have to tap that. There we go. My wife and I welcomed our new roommate, little Beatrix, and you can see the impact that little adorable interrupter has on one's health. Thankfully, it's been fun too. So now maybe that's how personal data and tech has really helped me recently. I'm curious if any of our panelists have anything to say about data tracking, health, finance, time.
Yeah, so I recently bought a Fitbit, and I can't tell you how much it's improved my life. Being able to track my sleep, my heart rate at all times, 92, which is a little over average right now. But being able to game, I'm a gamer, so gamerizing my health actually makes me want to work out more. It makes me want to sleep better. When I get that low score in sleep, I can't have that. I gotta raise those stats. So gamerizing my health, I think, is really important. So if you're looking for something that will help you, I think a Fitbit is the first buy.
I'm not an early adopter, so that's the thing that I think is a challenge with me. I do love the connected devices, and I do have my Apple Watch, which I love. The thing that I start to think about when you see all these new devices coming out, and my kids, 14 and 11, want to constantly move to the next version of things, even before I have the first version of them, is just all of the data that this is creating behind the scenes, and how do we manage that data. So to me, it's just interesting to see all of these industries and types of companies that are cropping up to manage this data, make sense of this data, and help us to better use it for our health and for our well-being.
Absolutely. So I'm a super busy guy. I have 3 kids. I have a grandson running around, and I do a lot of stuff. So I don't work out as much. My knees kind of sound like Rice Krispies. We're going to get to it a little bit, but I have to share with you guys that for virtual reality, okay, there's a device called the Oculus Quest at Best Buy right now for $399. I use this thing as a boxing trainer every single day, right? I sweat like profusely. My heart beats out of my chest. It's the most awesome way to get exercise because I don't feel like I'm exercising. I'm just trying to knock these guys out. And it's undeniable. So if you are struggling to find a way to get 15 minutes to get a really good hard workout, I think VR is proving to be one of the best fitness things that you can use. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone who has the Oculus Quest, I also like the Beat Saber. You can use lightsabers and you kill these boxes that are flying at you to the tune of different music. So my wife uses that herself. Kristy, you mentioned data. Is anyone concerned about privacy with some of these Fitbits or heart rates or things like that? I know that it raises an eyebrow often when you hear this stuff.
No, I think that's definitely an issue, and I think there are lots of smart people working on those as well. I mean, if you think of just enterprises as being some of the largest consumers of data, I think they're, ahead of the game, thinking about how do we make sure that our data is private, especially when you think of financial services, institutions, healthcare. A lot of those are obviously large industries here in the region, so we're definitely seeing a lot of companies that are helping make sense of that data and make sure it's secure.
And I might also ask the rest of the Smart Techie panel, I've heard that the more data that gets, with permission, published to medical analyzing companies, we can determine more trends. I think actually a Columbus-based company, Olive, was looking at using artificial intelligence to identify if people have a certain lifestyle, track the foods they eat, the exercise they have, and then have certain ailments or are alleviated of certain ailments. Maybe you can come up with big trends that identify, I think one of the examples was folks who eat avocados, for example, may have lower heart rate, things like that. Any experience in this kind of realm about using big data from personal data to make broader value for all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great holiday gift, actually, is 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. Data's a funny thing. We're in a really interesting paradigm shift right now with data because we all value privacy, but it's somewhat of an illusion at this point. There's so much data out there, so I kind of feel like at this point, why not embrace it and allow it to, give us a little bit of longevity and help us to make smarter decisions, right? So that's a great low-hanging fruit way to do it. 23andMe will give you some great signals on your health. There's the whole kind of quantified self approach with this thought of being able to just get basic, simple trackers that you can use to start understanding, tapping into your Fitbit. I just signed up for a program called the Go 365 at my job that incentivizes me to work out, and then that data gets pumped in, and then that directly reflects into my healthcare benefits. So, yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned 23andMe. Dad's Arabic, and Mom is Dutch and German. So when I did the 23andMe, and if people don't know, you spit in a test tube, mail it, and they send you back information about your heritage and genetics. So I expected it to say 50% Arabic, 25% Dutch, 25% German. And in fact, it did say 25% Dutch, 25% German, 1% Arabic, and 49% Italian. And I told Mom, is there something Dad doesn't know? And I looked just like Dad, so that was not an issue. But when I mentioned it to Dad, he said, oh, that's very interesting. Your grandmother was from Malta. And actually, that's where the 23andMe identified as Maltese. So I'm really impressed with how specific this can get. Yeah, interesting, fascinating stuff. Let's see what we have on the next slide there, Andy. Okay, I know Will mentioned that he's a busy guy. I think anyone who really has a very full schedule and really wants to keep track of the time they're spending, especially if you're a freelancer and you bill your hours on a dozen different tasks every day, I used to try to take notes or use an Excel spreadsheet or even QuickBooks. This is a product called Timular. It was funded by Kickstarter, so one of these crowdfunding projects where someone around the world had an interesting idea. They pitched it, many people pre-purchased it, and that made it come to life. It's a Bluetooth little device, and actually, Mr. Austin, I think you're in the audience here. My co-conspirator Austin here has a handful of things we're going to pass around for show and tell. So the Timular is being passed around now. It has a little Bluetooth device in it, so when you take it off its stand and turn it face up, it will start clocking time for that task that's on the face-up side. So you can put little stickers on that. You can use a little dry erase Sharpie. You can color code it. So if you're making phone calls, emails, or if you have a specific task about working with a particular client, you can do that. And then next slide, please, Andy. This is how I track my time So in addition to the little timer, there's also an app on your phone that you can add more tasks to. So commuting in town or taking care of the baby. So if you really want to take a step back and look at how you're spending your time so that you can live a better, fuller, more efficient life, I think Timular is a really interesting way to do that. And the next slide, please. Oh, and for those who, who want something with more than 8 sides, they've just come up with this 12-sided version as well, too. And I'm kind of jealous that they put the coffee break sign on there, too. And then just a cute little gadget here. I have a whole bunch of keys, and this little kind of Swiss Army keychain really does a lot for me. So having talked a little bit about personal tracking, time management, and then fun little personal gadgets, I'll throw this back on the panel and see if anyone has anything to contribute. Anyone use any time tracking apps or any tech in your pocket?
I'm actually trying to make a mental note to go get one of those little time tracker things. That looks awesome. That's been a huge struggle of mine. I feel like this is a problem we should have solved a long time ago, so maybe I was just missing out on that little cube there.
Yeah, that is a cool thing. I need to get your deck so I can order that. I think what's interesting about this having better information about how we're spending our time is what we'll end up using it for. I mean, even if you think of, just hiring and the types of people that we're adding to our company, for example, you've got a younger and younger workforce that is much more, I think, thoughtful about work-life balance. And I think this is going to enable us and them to be able to think about how they're spending their time, where they're spending their time, and probably continue to make shifts in that area, right? Because there are probably things that you found when you did this analysis, like, oh my gosh, why did I spend so much time doing that? That will enable you to really change your life. And I think that, in my mind, that's where I start to look at, like, how is that going to change how we work and play and, live our lives, so.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a problem with trying to manage my time, seeing if I saw where I actually waste my time, I'd probably be pretty upset.
Don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't want this thing because it's gonna really point out some flaws with how I do stuff. But definitely tracking stuff. I work with a lot of employees that work from home or they work in different places. So if I was able to see how they're spending their time and, they can end up justifying what they're spending all their time on. And if I could make more accurate improvements to their workflow and stuff like that, I could see this being a huge gift for any business.
And I think to your point, and Kristy, your point as well, with respect to how technology can improve our lives and help us live a little more fully, especially how distracting life can be with social media and all the demands on us. I'm not somebody who meditates regularly. I'm quickly and easily distracted. But by compelling myself to record every little thing I do each day has actually made me a little more focused, a little more grounded, a little more intentional. And I'll find that if I'd forgotten I'd left a bathroom break for 6 hours, I know that wasn't the case. So I know that I was kind of in a robotic mode where I was just flitting between tasks. And this has really encouraged me to be a little more thoughtful and intentional. Next slide, please, Andy. Okay, so now we're getting into toys. I know a few years ago, fidget spinners became all the rage. Speaking of folks who are distracted, maybe a little ADD, and want something to occupy themselves, this is a fidget spinner that actually flies, too. So you hold it between your hands, you spin it, and you throw it up in the air, and almost like a boomerang, it will come right back to you. I think this would be a hell of a fun office gift. I might buy this for myself. And at $30, I think this is a whole lot of fun. Next slide, please. So now we're getting more into the VR, and I know the Oculus Quest was already suggested by Will. I wholly second that. Virtual reality was really coming into its own a few years ago with the HTC Vive, which has a long cable that attaches to the computer. It's got these towers you have to set up. This is all wireless now. So really, you just put the thing on your head and go. And the next slide, please, will show some of the things you can do with it. So here we have a few videos of what the person inside the VR is seeing when they're playing with it. So you can draw with light. You can create these 3D amazing sculptures. So my 9-year-old nephew loves to draw. He'll use this regularly. And the next slide, please, will also 3D design things. So in the previous slide, we saw someone kind of painting with light with a Google app called Tilt Brush. Here, this person is actually using another Google app called Blocks, where you're making 3D designs virtually. So if you have an idea for nearly anything, a piece of jewelry, a retail product, a new innovation, you don't have to know complicated computer design programs anymore. You can actually sketch it in thin air with this stuff. So it's both a toy and a technically useful design tool. And then the next slide, if you'd like to make these things come to reality, we all know that 3D printing is pretty fun, innovative, and cool, but it's still a little bit technically challenging. Those machines still aren't quite push button, but there are services now where if you want to design something and then hold it in your hand a week later, there's a website called Shapeways where you can email the file that you created with that Oculus Quest app, and a week later they'll mail you back your 3D printed part. And that can be in plastic or it can even be in metal. And Austin's going to hand around a few pieces. We have a 3D printed shoe. I'm involved with a fashion-based makerspace that's going to be opening in Columbus shortly. We wanted to show that we could 3D print some fashion. And then there's also a metal ring, a piece of jewelry that's got some intricate designs. I think the shoe costs 14 bucks. I think that ring only costs $9. So if you want to start your own jewelry company, or if you want to make custom jewelry for a loved one, you can design it in the Oculus Quest, and then you can email it to a company like Shapeways, and they'll mail you back that part pretty quickly. So this is clearly a little on the techier side of the fun toys, but I'd like people to know that this is a thing now. And next slide, please. So you can even use, if you don't want to design something, if you don't think you're terribly creative or terribly talented, you can use a camera, even your smartphone, to take 30 or 40 photos of something or someone, and then you can 3D print their head. So here, Austin and his colleague use a smartphone to just take 30 or 40 pictures of Austin's head, and then we use one of our 3D printers at the shop to actually print that up. We then use that to actually make a silicone mold to pour chocolates in. So you can blend this in a whole number of fun, interesting, and quirky ways. So I know that's an awkward lead in. I'm curious to see where the panel will take this.
So much there.
Yeah.
VR is definitely one of the coolest things I think I've ever experienced. I really compare it to like the first time you ride a bike, the first time you go on a plane, ride a roller coaster, any of those things. VR is kind of like that experience. You put on the headset and you instantly are somewhere else. You're in a different world. And it's just amazing the different applications that have come out in the last 5 years. And even I do a lot of gaming, but really the real world applications are more important. Last night I watched some guy perform surgery where he was actually training in VR. He got to actually use the tools, get to see everything. There's a rock climbing experience where you're sitting there climbing and you feel every single part of it. And you know, when you get out of it, my palms are sweaty. Like I really feel like it was I was really doing it. And even I would compare VR more to real life experiences. Like if you're doing a sport in VR, it feels more like a sport than it does playing a video game. So it actually does, like he uses it for boxing, it really does kind of increase your heart rate, trick your brain. You have something covering your vision, you have something covering your ears, it has a mic that picks up your mouth, you can put on a haptic suit, gloves, walk on a trackpad. It's covering every sense that you typically have. So you can get transported into these worlds that people create and you never thought you would ever live out. So it's really, really cool what's going on with VR.
Yeah, VR is powerful. We all need to keep our eyes on this one. You know, tech is funny. You never really quite know when it's going to land, but when this one does, it will be the next generation computing platform, I'm thoroughly convinced. VR is 50% more effective for pain management than morphine, right? It's a 80% greater retention when you train with it. I mean, the cognitive impact of this stuff is uncanny. The company that I started, I have an autistic grandson, and I found an autism simulator in virtual reality, and I was able to put on the goggles and see what his world actually looks like. And it completely changed the way that I raise him. That was what sent me deep down that rabbit hole. And we built opioid detox simulators, we built epilepsy simulators, social work training simulators. So I feel like we're just scratching the surface of what this technology can actually do. It's just getting everybody to go out and get that device and actually put it on. I think that's going to make it tip. So start with boxing.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree with you both more. We see a lot of interesting things coming through the doors around this area. I mean, a good example is a company called Little Seed that's actually creating VR for the ER. So imagine the scary experience that it is when you have to go to the emergency room, especially with a child. And now you're able to basically transport them somewhere else so that they feel less pain or they can get through a procedure that may be very difficult for them. So this is super exciting, and love to see how this gets applied beyond some of the really fun areas like gaming.
And I was really grateful to see virtual reality land on the commercial prosumer scene, but people who write a lot of virtual reality apps often say that VR is a placeholder for augmented reality, for when we can immerse ourselves in our daily world with that augmented digital world. Anyone want to speak about augmented reality and explain what that is to the crowd too?
Absolutely, yeah. AR is basically digital objects in a real world space. So it's like the perfect blend between 360 video, which is another technique, and then the fully immersive VR. The delivery mechanism right now is still dominantly mobile screens, but where it's really going to tip is when it gets into glasses, so that's what we're waiting for. There's a couple really high-end versions of it out there right now, like the HoloLens, the Magic Leap, but these are really more for professional usage, right? But as that starts to scale down and become more of a stylish object, I'm kind of waiting for Apple to tip that. They seem to be the ones that do that. Then that's when we won't need our phones anymore. You can just make your calls. The person will just float in front of you. We did a really neat app for Ohio State University where we made dance notation float in front of the dancers, and they could build the score and interpret the dance collectively. It has a million awesome use cases for that. And it's less intrusive. It's less like the immersion of VR can be kind of isolating sometimes. So I think that's what will make that one much more broader acceptance.
There isn't any AR at your facility, is there yet, Justin?
No, I mean, Pokemon Go, if everyone's probably seen someone doing that, that's AR. It's just putting something into the real world, and I'm pretty excited for all the real world applications. Like, I can't wait for it to be in contacts and glasses, and you're kind of like RoboCop when you walk around, you just got stats and stuff telling you what's going on around you and improving different aspects of what you do on your daily life.
Yeah, really fun. How about our last set of categories, Andy? Great. So if virtual reality can really immerse us in a new environment that's vibrant and glowing and really exciting, but we still live in the real world. I like things that can make our real world also living and vibrant and exciting. So for just $30, you can go to Target or you can go on Amazon and buy these LED strips that you just plug into the wall. You don't have to do any soldering. And it comes with a remote or it comes with a mobile app. So you can change the colors by tapping your phone or by just pressing the remote control. And in fact, it's got a little sticky adhesive backing. So you don't have to have any talent in drywall or in gluing or things like that. So anything you like that you want to backlight your kitchen counters, your TV, and add a little bit of interesting vibrance to your home, your apartment, your work. For $30, I can't think of a more interesting way to suddenly make my place really fun and cool. This is something that I've used a lot, both at the shop and at my house. And the next slide, I think you had that, Andy. So equally, if we want to change our earscape, nothing changes my mood faster than music. And but I'm not the kind of person who will run wires through the walls of my apartment. So I love that Bluetooth speakers are now so cost-effective, so easy to use. And a few years ago, you had to take some time to really make your phone connect to the speakers. Now that tech is so transparent and so easy that it's really not a worry if I buy one of these things. So again, go to Walmart, go to Target, get a $30 or $40 Bluetooth speaker, and you can fill your room with music all the time. I also finally took a plunge on these AirPods that I've seen everyone walking around wearing with the white little antennae coming out of their ears. I understand why they have them now. They're really amazing. Not just great music, not just really good tech to connect your phone trouble-free. I accidentally left them in my jeans pocket and washed them in the washing machine, and they still work great. They were still charged, in fact. I was surprised. That might not have been the case if they went through the dryer. But these are great ways if you want to fill your world with sound and such. And then if you want to do both, if you want to see and hear people, the Ring remote doorbell camera is a great product too. This has been promoted a bit recently, so you can stick this on your outside door. Someone comes and rings the bell. You're notified whether you're at home or whether you're at work. Your smartphone will pop up. In addition, I put that picture with the bricks to just show you how small and unobtrusive it is. But now they also sell a solar version of it too. So you don't even have to run wire to it. You don't have to drill through the brick to have a little wire come out. You just buy the thing, stick it on your wall, and there you go. So these, that might wrap the last of our, oh, no, I have a few more here. A few years back, those digital photo screens came out, and I remember buying my mom one. She never really used it. It was a little low res. It was a little awkward to load. It looked a little cheap. In the last year or so, these have really become much classier, much more stylish, much easier to use, and it's a great way if you can't pick which photo, which kid you want to look at this day. You can put them all on the camera or on the portrait. And the next one, please. This is a really interesting one. If you want to just have art on your walls, I'm someone who likes a lot of things. It's hard for me to commit to what I want to look at on my wall for the next few years. So to have a digital picture frame that can rotate through different types of art is a nice innovation for me. And this one here, too, looks a little bit odd. What this is a self-charging digital picture frame. So again, you don't have to run wires through your wall. You don't have to have an ugly wire running up from your outlet to the wall. This actually dangles a little charger that charges itself. Once it's fully charged, that charger retracts, and it just looks like an illuminated piece of art on your wall. So really kind of nice night light. This is new tech that I didn't really know existed until Andy suggested we talk about toys and tech. So I'm glad to have learned a little bit myself. Still looking forward to learning what the rest of the panel might have regarding home tech, and hear any questions from you in a couple of minutes. So any of our panelists use any home tech or fun stuff like this?
Yeah, so it's home and you can use it for a business, but I have the speakers, and it connects to like a Sonos, and it allows you to play music wherever you're at from your phone. I'll put it at my business, so if I'm at Game Arena, I can just flip on whatever music. If some song comes on with a cuss word, I have to hurry up and scramble and turn it off real quick. And then so the security cameras are very similar to the Ring, but putting them around a business, it's good for some people, bad for micromanagers, because then you just want to look and see what your employees are doing all the time, and then send those text messages, hey, why aren't you doing this? But the Bluetooth, it saves you so much money from having to pay a contractor to come out and do the wiring for all this stuff. I mean, sometimes that can cost $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and by having the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi options of all these things, it severely cuts costs on a lot of these things. So for home or business, it's accessible to everybody now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's what our family has actually moved to, where you have a connected device, Bluetooth device in each room. Even the lights are all connected to a Bluetooth device. You can turn on lights in rooms from different places in the house, and even be able to drop in on your kids 2 floors down and yell at them to come up for dinner. So, I mean, the fact that that's now the norm, in our household is kind of ironic, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, the Echo, the Google Home, that's a great hub for all of that. On the digital picture frame front, there's also, the Echo Show and the Facebook portal, I think it is, and in Google Home as well with the screens. And one of the interesting things we're doing this year is I'm buying that for my mother-in-law and for my dad, so that they can actually just kind of tap into our household and feel a little more connected to what we're doing. So that's a really neat way to leverage that.
Well, Alex, I had to laugh when you mentioned that you finally got AirPods, because I just noticed on, you probably saw, some of you saw this on Instagram, Nordstrom is selling a $60 connector for your AirPods so that you don't lose them. So they basically look like
They're back to
back to the original AirPods.
Wow.
Cyclical.
Yep.
Right?
Tying a string to my wireless mouse because I keep losing
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, Andy, shall we take some questions from the audience now?
Okay. A question for all of you. We talked about VR, and it's so fascinating. And I remember years ago watching science fiction movies, and they talked about some of this VR being permanent. They would inject negative things, and then the person couldn't tell whether it was real or was from the VR. And do you think that's anything that could happen? In other words, how does your brain a week down the road think, did I really do that, or was that, from VR? The other question I asked, you just prompted, wanted to ask about Bluetooth and all the things we send through the air. Does anybody have any information on any effects on our bodies or our brain with all that? So in my house, I've got VR, everything, not VR, but some VR, but Bluetooth and all these other things that operate things, and I just wonder if anybody's heard anything scientific about that. So those two things. Thank you.
I can do the VR question. So yeah, it kind of takes a little bit of adjustment. When I first got my VR headset, I probably spent like 3 hours a day for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to see kind of what it is. And it definitely has some weird effects, like you'll be walking around and kind of get like a little glimpse of something that you remember from VR, and it kind of messes with you. But also, I also think it heightened my senses in a really weird way, almost like it's like training your senses. It's really a weird situation, because if you're in there for an hour, you kind of do forget. Like when you take off the headset, it's like you actually readjust to real life again right away. Like it's a really weird feeling when you're dealing with VR, and I don't think it creates any long-term problems or anything. I do have a friend that he's a developer, so he has to spend like 8 hours a day in VR, and he does say his hearing has gotten better, his eyesight has gotten different, not better or worse, but it's more unique. It's hard to describe. And then a little bit about the Bluetooth question. I'm sure they'll be able to answer a little better. It's probably still not great to have all these waves, electric, magnetic waves constantly around us. But as long as you're not sleeping with your phone under your pillow every day, or it's constantly attached to you at all times, and it's not immediately on your body at all times, I think you're probably all right. But I mean, we need to wait 25 years, right, for a study to actually come out.
Absolutely. Yeah, on the VR front, I could tell you that, if you had a chance to try the plank back here, what always fascinated about us when we ran that exercise is it takes about 3 minutes, right, for your brain to suspend its belief and kind of shift over into that world, and you accept that as your reality, and you feel it when your fight or flight kicks in and you're afraid to actually jump off the plank, right? Now, what I used to always say is this is a low fidelity environment, right? The overarching goal of virtual reality is going to be photorealism, to the point where our brains really can't tell the difference between the two. And we're going to have a lot of things that we have to figure out how to deal with as a result of that, right? The biggest one I'm probably concerned about is desensitization. you can get in there and play video games where you're on subways shooting people or doing crazy things like that. And after a while, I question how that's going to impact your sensibilities when you get back into the real world. Now, conversely, I think that learning is going to be drastically improved and maybe disintermediated to some degree, because a lot of information you won't really need anymore. It can just be there and be kind of ubiquitous in your experience. On the Bluetooth front, which I think is an awesome question, I'll just say that cell phone, I read this, so I don't know this for certain, but the 5G towers are a lot shorter, and they need a lot more of them to make that work. And I've read some really interesting speculative studies around how that radiation might impact us. So hopefully we don't have to wait 25 years to find out we end up growing extra arms or something like that. But yeah, sorry, it comes out sometimes.
Marie.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Marie Trudeau with W.E. Davis Insurance. I'm going to start out with a commercial. I'm the keeper of the raffle tickets for the airline passes. So if you didn't get yours yet, find me. And Alex, I have a question for you. Well, I have an Alexa that I just learned how to use because my CD player broke. So I'm kind of low tech, and I like to give handmade gifts, locally made gifts for the holidays. And are you having your sale at the Idea Foundry?
Yes, indeed. And in fact, I think, forgive me, I'm grateful that last year I stepped aside as CEO and elevated our COO to CEO, and she runs a tighter ship than I. So check out ideafoundry.com for the actual calendar date. But we do have several hundred artisans who make locally made gifts out of wood, blacksmith metal, jewelry, and high-tech fun 3D printed things too. So yeah, please check that out, and glad for asking.
Thank you. And then it sounds like some of these life-changing toys or tech things, they sound expensive. My concern is, are we going to get a bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots? Because the haves will get so far ahead with the tech stuff that we all will begin to rely on. The have-nots never were exposed to it. Do you see that as an issue? Thank you.
Well, for VR, you can get it as low as like $100. And tech typically gets cheaper as it moves on every 2 years, what's currently out. So, I mean, there is always like a 2-year gap of what's available to when it becomes affordable to everybody. But VR, you can get a Gear VR that attaches to a Samsung phone for as low as $99. And the stuff we're talking about is like $300. If you want the highest end, it's only like $800 and $900, not only. But I don't know if there'll be too much of a gap with tech, because it always seems to trickle down. It's like you might not have the newest thing, but most people, even if you have the money, don't tend to adopt the stuff when it's super expensive. They wait for it to go on sale and wait a few years to adopt tech.
I do think on a broader scale, I mean, if you think more beyond just even access to the internet, right? I think that is still a huge challenge everywhere and in Columbus. So I think it will continue to make that a challenge if we don't tackle some of those bigger issues.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the accessibility to technology will be easy and very accessible for most people, because it's going to be the infrastructure that's driving everything. But the gap that I'm interested in will be in the understanding of how to leverage it, how to be more agile in this environment as it starts to automate the rote things, which is kind of we're feeling now. So yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a gap, but I sense that it'll be more of a behavioral gap than an accessibility or an infrastructure gap.
And I might add to all of that. A couple of years ago, Harvard Business School identified the greatest threat to American democracy as wealth inequality, and where I'm actually very excited about the kind of technology we've been talking about today. Not only is it fun that you can draw what you like and walk off skyscrapers without getting hurt, but I joke that YouTube is the world's university now, and that at the Idea Foundry, we accidentally created a school where the answer to every question is Google it. So in essence, information has been unsiloed from universities and democratized. So if you can afford access to YouTube or Wikipedia or the web in general, then you can learn pretty darn near anything. And you can really upvalue yourself insofar as what you know is valuable. And that is one of the hopes that I have for how this kind of technology and the infrastructure and the dissemination, and I think, Will, you mentioned too, how the interface, how learning is going to be easier and, in fact, more fun and interactive than before, because you don't need to memorize a lot of stuff. It's at your fingertips. So this really emphasizes people's creativity, what people are good at that machines aren't, thinking of the next thing. So that's my optimistic horizon for how this tech might reduce some of that inequality. But it's certainly a critical issue. Please, next question.
I'm Carol Looper, and I'm a retired television reporter. I have grandsons 13 and 12. They spend a lot of time playing Fortnite. They tell me that people are making a lot of money watching or being watched playing Fortnite. I guess that's a thing. Tell me more about it.
Yeah.
This is yours.
So,
I'm gonna
Fortnite.
interrupt, Justin, if I may, I might ask you to spend 30 seconds re-describing your business,
Okay.
what it is you do.
Okay, well, there's two businesses. One actually is 100% related to Fortnite, but Game Arena is a place that people come to play video games. It's like a Dave & Buster's, but with modern day computers, and we hold competitions where people do win money when they win a competition, and we hold it for many different video games, including Fortnite. Then Vanguard is actually a pro Fortnite team. It's a collective of players that we assign to contracts. We provide a nutritionist, a personal trainer. We manage them, help them get sponsors, make sure that they're sleeping properly and performing just like a real athlete, because they are real athletes, because they have to physically and mentally perform at a video game better than other people. For Fortnite specifically, how it works is anyone from the age of 13 can enter any weekend into a tournament. If they are one of the best people, they will make it through a series of events where then they play for a lot of money. And Fortnite uses the money that they receive from people buying skins or V-Bucks. I'm sure you've all heard of that. And then they will use that money to create prize pools. A lot of people probably heard about the $3 million that happened in June or July in the World Cup. But every single weekend, you can win tens of thousands of dollars. We actually have a 14-year-old from Columbus that we signed that he has won $200,000 in multiple events. His team won about $500,000. His cut was just the $200,000. And he's 14. I had to convince him yesterday not to buy a $10,000 watch. But we do help him with his wealth management and learning how to invest his money properly and how to spend it. But then their social media following is kind of the Wild West part of it, where someone like Ninja just negotiated a $60 million contract to switch streaming platforms. So instead of being on Twitch, he moved to Mixer and got $60 million for that. So the reach is the most important part with Fortnite. It's how many people are following your social medias, and then sponsors are really interested in that because it's really hard to reach an 18-year-old or under. And when you're an influencer, you tell someone to buy something to 20,000 people, a lot of them buy it because you're like their best friend at that point. They just had some crazy statistic that if you're under 18, you're more likely to like Ninja than LeBron James. So yeah, Fortnite is kind of this weird Wild West that it's a lot of fun, and it gives a lot of opportunity to anybody.
And I know this forum is very forward-looking when we're talking about new technologies and new applications, but it's fun also to look a little bit in the past. And I wonder when the first conversation was had where someone's getting paid to play football or paid to play basketball. That must have been a surprise also. So it's interesting to hear the term digital athlete now. Hi, next question, please.
Yeah, I'm Mark Allen Editorial. I'm a freelancer, so I'm very interested in that 12-sided thing, Gizmo. I use Toggle now on the computer, but just to have something I can carry with me everywhere will probably keep me much too honest. My question is actually about virtual reality. My millennials introduced me to virtual reality a couple of years ago, where they brought it to our house and set up the towers and the wires. And The thing that struck us, the thing that was so interesting about it was not actually doing it, but thinking about it afterwards and thinking about all the incredible applications this could have and how wide open it is, and especially in the area of training, and not just the complicated things with the painting and the shooting things and things like that, but just the very simple applications like having a meeting where everybody, in one office has a headset, people in the other office, and they're all around the same table. They can all see each other. They can all see the visual clues, the signals. Anyway, so my question is, that just seems so, there's just so much there that's ripe for designing these applications. And what is it waiting for the technology at this point? Is there this huge groundswell that is, going to bubble forth in the next year? And is that going on locally in Columbus, or is it going on somewhere else?
Does one of our panelists have a 1-minute answer?
Yeah. Oh, did you want to go ahead?
30 seconds.
Go for it.
All right. So locally, Lay Architecture actually designed our game arena on campus, and they built it in VR for me to put on the VR headset and walk around the space and visualize everything. And by doing that, I get to see, oh, wow, this space was too small. It wasn't what I expected when I looked at the 2D model. So now I make changes based on what I get to walk. It's like I walk the space just like I would when it's fully done. And doing that, Lay Architecture has separated themselves from other architects because if I can visually see everything, I want to always use VR to visualize the space. So I think with businesses especially, they're going to start separating themselves with who is allowing you to actually interact with what you want. Victoria's Secrets uses it to look at merchandise stands, and a bunch of other companies are using VR to do very similar things where you can really visualize and deal with it.
We have more than 30 seconds, Will, for your answer.
Oh, that's cool. I believe firmly that VR will be the next web development. The challenge is that it's a super high barrier of entry because most people have never tried it before. The moment that you're referring to, in my studio, we used to call that the existential moment, right? Which is when you realize we could literally recreate this exact experience that we're in right now and go back into that, but we can change things, And so when you're thinking of that in terms of a sales cycle, right, it takes 6 months just to really figure out how to wrap your head around this thing and then actually find a practical business application for it. So the more people that we get actually using it and getting comfortable with it and then thinking about how they can leverage it, I think that's what's going to speed it up. The challenge is that the infrastructure, the technology, the hardware has to stay in sync with that and be compelling enough for them to continue to build, right? So we're already seeing the mobile VR starting to fall off, believe it or not. It just didn't get adopted fast enough, so a lot of that's getting dropped. It's moving now more into the headsets, which changes the dynamic a bit. To Alex's point, I think augmented reality, ironically, is going to be the thing that kicks it over the fence, and VR will be more of a specialist type of play. So.
Explain that, please.
The AR-VR comparison there? So augmented reality is just a much more comfortable experience, right? And it's a much more practical experience. So, for example, I just got my HVAC unit fixed, right? And I'm the type, I'll get on YouTube, I'll figure out how to fix my car, fix my plumbing, whatever. So I could literally look at my HVAC unit and have that thing blow out part by part in front of me in augmented reality and put it back together 100 times till I build muscle memory and then just fix it myself. That's what I think that augmented reality is going to do for us. VR is a little different because it's an experience. You have to put the goggles on, you have to be dedicated. I was talking to someone earlier, you have to make sure there's nothing around you, right? I've punched holes in walls before. My wife punched me in the face one time. So it's a much more, I probably shouldn't have said that, honestly. Yeah. We have a rule, stay out of the zone in my house. But it's a much more committed experience. And I mean, the benefit is uncanny. Again, the training is awesome. You can train under any scenario. I'm training with Columbus Police right now. We're building shooting range training simulators so they can continue to practice. But again, it's so much more of a commitment, I think, and that creates a huge barrier as well. Yeah.
Last question, please.
I'm Chuck Lind. I'm a retired educator. My question is, are there people developing VR for science concepts?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's some great science and healthcare experiences out there. Everything from traveling through the body to a virtual electron microscope where you can actually go all the way into the electron and look out. The possibilities are endless with what you can do with visualization. Do this one concept called transmogrification or something like that, where you have the ability to scale yourself down to the size of other objects and see what the perspective looks like looking out. So you can imagine how that would translate into a world of science, right, where you have a lot of things that you're kind of just speculating what that feels like. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Josh?
I hope you found today's forum interesting. I know I did. I learned all sorts of new ways to burn a pile of cash, so thank you. Let's, one more time, thank our speakers, Alex Bandar, Kristy Campbell, Will Burrus, and Justin Kogge. And a special thanks to all of you. We look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.